the delimitation of the nose, experience and practice of that kind of things. And of course, what is also very important is to give some advices to our students what research needs and priorities are important to Arctic development. So let's start with this. Thank you very much. So it's very important to understand that Arctic and North is very close, and it's very important to understand the limitation. So how we can understand where we are doing our research. In the different fields, we call, for example, like northern communities, or we call some different kind of medicine, like northern medicine or Arctic medicine. Each time we have to understand where we are doing this research, why it's have this name. By the way, Arctic research cooperation internationally, so international scientific cooperation in the Arctic has existed for more than 150 years. And it really started from the International Polar Year, 1882-1883, and the last International Polar Year was not long time ago, 2007-2008, and it's very interesting, very important that real political cooperation or economical cooperation in Arctic firstly started through the science and through the environmental questions. So the Arctic Environmental Protection Strategy, it was organization before the organization of the Arctic Council. And Arctic Council came to the world in estimated in 1996, and later the Arctic Council is a very unique international organization welcoming the indigenous people as permanent participants of this collaboration. And also it's very important to mention that Arctic Council also has a number of observers that includes not non-Arctic states, intergovernmental and interparliamentary organizations, and also some non-governmental organizations. And also very important for us, for our school, for our topic today, that Arctic Council also took the initiative for creation of two independent organizations. So the University of the Arctic, one of those organizations, it's from 1998, and now more than 200 different organizations, scientific research focused, universities, institutions, professional schools, different international organizations are the part of this family of UArctic. And also another organization which also was took by the initiative from Arctic Council, it's the Arctic Economic Council from 2014. It's still in progress, less progress than UArctic, than education people and science people, but as I mentioned before, it's a tradition of Arctic. So scientists come in first, researchers come in first, and then real cooperation between different countries, different subjects of activity. What is also important, and we have to remember that UArctic, which I mentioned before, the International Arctic Science Committee, IASC, the International Arctic Social Sciences Association, IASA, there are observer organizations in Arctic Council, and also they represent the scientific community in the Arctic Council. It's very important when you are going to choose your topic of research, you want to see who will make the research in the same field with you, which you decided to choose. Just better go to these three organizations, UArctic, IASC, and IASA. Yeah, one more time. So we need to understand what research needs and priorities are important to Arctic development. let's start with an understanding of the North, the problem of definition. Yeah, it's really the problem. It was a funny situation a couple of years ago here in Russia when one of my colleagues from Arctic State Institute of Culture and Arts came from conference in Arkhangelsk, where Putin was involved as the president of the country. And she came back home and said, there is no North anymore in Russia. There is only Arctic. But of course, for me, as a person who really study the North, involved in North, I understand that Arctic, it's also a very important part of the North. It's part of the North, but now internationally, there is more attention to the Arctic. There is less understanding to the North because not too many countries in the world, they really have the North. Like in Canada, they understanding the real North or true North, and only maybe Canada and Russia, we really know the differences inside this area, inside these limitations. So there are many ways how we can define the North, and two main groups of definitions. It's single factor definitions, and it's really that early scholars of the North working with limited data and focusing on climate and biology tended towards single factor definitions of the areas of study. You can find a few examples of this kind of definitions. And I will go with you to the Arctic Portal website. It's a very good source for taking in information about the science, coming projects, past projects from the past, some library governance information from indigenous people, from states, Arctic states, non-Arctic states, and also some very good maps. And for example, here, just take a look on this single factor, very good examples of single factor limitations, understanding of the North. So Arctic Circle, understanding of Arctic definition, one of the way how we can explain where is Arctic, but we understand that it's really mathematically looks good, but it's not really when we are talking relations with the surface, with the real nature, with real situation on the place. One more point, 10 degrees centigrade July as a term. It's very important also to understand the warmest months and average temperature for the warmest months or months of the year. And we understand that in some regions of Arctic and North, the summer is coming very, very late and not a big temperature, not enough heat for the life. So as a result, now we have some other boundaries which appeared because of human activity, researchers' activity, countries' activity. For example, Arctic Human Development Report. It's already 2 editions, very good one, just take a look. AHDR, Arctic Human Development Report boundary, where you can understand everything about the organizing the human life. So how people live and survive in these conditions. It's also one of the limitations. One more, it's also a result of the human activity of researchers. It's the emergency prevention and preparedness and response. This EPPR boundary, Arctic EPPR boundary, it's also very important. And by the way, as I know, at least from the open sources, there is only this one, internationally signed document by all 8 states, which was accepted by all 8 states in Arctic because it's problems of emergency preparedness to the different kind of situations. So there's very strong level of cooperation between all the countries, not only 8 Arctic states, but also all others which are coming here into this region from outside. One more, it's a CAF boundary, the conservation of Arctic flora and fauna, and it's very important part of Arctic Council activity, one of the working group as a part of Arctic Council activity. And also you can see that there are some differences in the boundaries demarcating lines here. And of course, when we are talking the single factor definition, so you can follow my presentation, these maps. And I just want to say a few words, to add a few words, that in terms of demarcating an area, it's when we're talking about the single factor definitions, of course, it's very difficult to use it. For example, Arctic 3-line boundary, very good one, easy to understand. But for example, when we are going to use it for demarcating an area, at least when we are talking about the 3-line boundary, it's difficult to use for two main reasons. First of all, it does not recognize that the taiga-tundra boundary division is not an actual line, and it's a broad area, like ecoton from 50 to 100 kilometers wide. And second, why it doesn't work, this, when we're talking about the single factor definition, why it doesn't work in different parts of Arctic and North, that because it does not hold true, doesn't work in coastal areas because of influence of water, influence of an ocean and parts of an ocean. So yeah, so understanding of high Arctic, low Arctic, subarctic. And if we can imagine all these different lines, the active, it's so we can call it like modern single factor definitions, modern lines, modern understanding of Arctic definitions in our time, when time where we live right now. Okay, so back to this one, back to this presentation. As a result, so we have to think about something else. So we have to go to what other ways how we can make the definition of the North. So multiple factor definitions. Just take a look on it. So this one is taken from Slavin. It's a very good publication, very good book. It's a Soviet time scientist who made a lot of input to study the North. And when we can go through this four main understanding and how in the Soviet search regions were identified as a North. So the first position that the North is, so when we are talking about the real North, it's situated to the north of economically developed and settled regions of the country. So this region, they should be on some distance from the principal industrial centers. And of course, it's really the way to understand that the North in human understanding, not only as a way of directions on our Earth, but the understanding of the region where the people live, it's unstable because it's out of market economy, and at the same time, it's really depend from the world markets. It's really dependent from the world markets and really depend from the connection with the principal industrial centers. So we remember what happened with Greenland many years ago when people from settlers from Europe came, and then the no connection, and there is disappeared. So many principal centers of human activity in the modern North, which appeared in the previous, they disappeared, and it's process in the progress, unfortunately. So we are talking about the more involvement people to Arctic and North, but at the same time, it's a really strong process of depopulation, of moving people out, and so on. The second one is distinguished by sparse population. So understanding of how many people live, how can make effect on the development. And of course, what is also very important for understanding the multiple factor definition level, it's an understanding that this region, they characterized by high costs of construction compared with other regions of the country or of the world. Even in case of education, Even in case of education, we can say that I remember the experience that was in Russia like 15 years ago. It was organized as the system of educational certificate to the students who can choose the university and receive money from the federal government. And our university, in those time, it was Yakut State University, we was a part of this experience. But we got the same money from each student like some universities who was a part of this experience from Central Russia got. So of course it's not equal, it's not the same money, because it's more high cost. As a result, it was closed. So this kind of activity was closed in those time. And also one more factor, understanding this kind of regions when we are talking about northern. So northern regions, it's distinguished by a harsh physical environment and making economic development more difficult or many economical activities even impossible. So you can't do that in this region. So this is very important to understand, to remember. If we are talking from the practical point of view, so how it looks practically on the map, how the people can use it in a practical life, in real life. So this is a very good example, Russian case, how, of course, it comes from the Soviet time. So it's already more than 100 years of this kind of limitations of the North. You can recognize that in the black color, it's regions of the far North. And this one here, the green one, it's regions which have some special rights very close to the organizing the human life with the high North region. And it still works, and you can recognize that there is some islands of this kind of regions, which is isolated from the main part of the northern, high northern regions of the country. It's because of also some limitations of human activity. This one on the map, you can recognize it in the south of Eastern Siberia. It's, for example, Tiva region. It's a mountainous region, harsh population, very difficult nature conditions, permafrost, and so on. As a result, many years ago, for making possible the development of this region, it was also known as a northern region. And modern time, more modern time, so it was the previous experience, very good knowledge, a lot of research, some effects of development, many people, many projects. And in modern time, it's started in not a long time ago. So in 2013, by the decision of president of the country, of Russian Federation, we got a new region, Arctic Zone of Russian Federation. So it's a yellow one here. So as I mentioned before, Arctic is a very important part of the North. So yellow Arctic Zone of Russian Federation. And also like here's a black one, black color, it's a high North, and the green one is again the territories which have almost the same rights, the same conditions of human activity, right, like the high North. And from 2013, there are some changes. I will show you on the map, because we spent, I mean, the government of Republic of Sakha-Yakutia, and I also was involved in this job. We were trying to explain to the federal government that in Yakutia, there is more than only this 5 regions along the coast, along the Arctic Ocean coast. There is more regions in Yakutia who should be a part of Arctic Zone of Russian Federation. And this year, the president of Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, he made changes to the Arctic Zone of Russian Federation. So now Yakutia has this sector as a part of Arctic Zone of Russian Federation. So you can recognize that some more regions, 5 coastal regions plus 8 municipalities, administrative districts of Yakutia became a part of Arctic zone of Russian Federation. And of course, now when it's announced, so it's the way how we can plan the development of these regions, how we can support the development of these regions. And the problem of definition of the North, what was not only the problem of Soviet Union on Russia or modern Russian Federation. Of course, it's also the problem of all northern countries, because understanding how you can support, how you can understand the development of these northern areas, it's very important for the people who live for the countries. And very good example, I think that the maybe most successful one, it was made in Canada. Canada, Hamelin, very famous scientist, he took many previous work done in the Soviet Union, and he organized the index, the Nordicity. So he took some components. The Nordicity index had 10 natural and human components. So it counts here from latitude, summer heat, and so on to the air service population or degree of economic activity. And it's very important that each component was graded on the scale from 0 to 100, and where 100 represented extreme Nordicity. So more points, more Nordicity. And only one place, by this understanding, by this theory, only one place on our Earth has a Nordicity 1000 points. So 10 indicators, 100 each, maximum 1000. Of course, it's North Pole. Only one place in the world. We can theoretically calculate that it's only the place where Nordicity can exceed 1000 points. And of course, it's very important then WAPO not only represented the sum of these 10 components, but also we can calculate, or we can define the minimum of points which place should receive to be called as a northern region. So by the Hamelin understanding, 200 points and more, 200 points and more. And in this case, we can say that you are in the north. Less than 200, you are out of the north. So as a result, Hamelin, like in the case of Russian Federation, 2 maps before in my explanations, Hamelin, he made very good dividing of the country. So he subdivided Canada into extreme north, far north, middle north, near north. Of course, it's in this case, it's easier to understand where you live, what kind of conditions do you have, and what kind of human activities it's possible to do there. And I'm finishing this part of my speech, finishing with how we can understand the aims and models of development on the North. There are several theoretical models. I put it on one place. So it's managed economy. So we are talking about the transformation of the new space and its arrangement for the direct permanent residence in its population. It's very difficult question, and many cases as a result. For example, in Canada and in Russia, as a big northern countries, we don't have only one model of development of the North. There are many models. And in Russian language, in Russian scientific language, in from geographical point of view, we have North as a plural, not only one North, but Norths. So many different regions, which we can call as a North, but with some differences. And of course, from this point of view, we have to understand that because of there are many different parts of the North in each northern country, that we have to choose a different models of development. Also related, for example, with the residents. So permanent residents or people who just come in to work here. It's a huge difference, even mentally. how we will think about this territory. It's very important to understand. And another model, and with their own aims, it's colonial model. So it's of course it's related with the traditional understanding of the when colonizers come into other place with their culture, like technical something, many other things, but they are coming to the place to take some resources. So representative of the main country or main place of development, they are, in this case, they are coming to take resources. They have some political and economic interest. So it's a colonial model. And another model, of course, it's very difficult sometimes to translate from language to language. For example, colonial way, it's very came to Russian scientific language from French. So different understanding how you can call so colony in from the socio-economical point of view or from political point of view. So another one, it's production. So for the development of resource consumption, it's also one of the way how we can this development really leads to some environmental, social, and economic problems, but it's also one of the way which humanity choose for development, for working with the territory. An economic one also as a model. So sustainable development of the area leads to the some above effects. So when this kind of model is working, economic model, so development associated with obtaining additional benefits. So in this case, some local people, permanent residents can be involved, and some special, some new effects for development of the territory are coming. And this kind of theory is also very important to understand the modern scientific way of thinking about the North. And one more point, which also I have to mention, that it's very important to remember that Arctic research, science and research in Arctic, it's rising very fast. So only 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, in 2016, it was firstly during the whole history of the world was made a very good research by Arctic, initiative from Arctic. It was Arctic Research Publication Strengths. So country by country, scientist by scientist, organization by organization, fund by fund, and so on, citation by citation. It was gathered together, very good one. I also advise you just to go through this, and you can find it in internet. And this Arctic Research Publication Trends was followed by International Arctic Research Analyzing Global Funding Trends in 2017. Some conclusions, of course, you can find more on the website, in internet. So just under 1% of all recorded global research is related with Arctic research, Arctic area. So of course, it's not a lot, but also we can understand what kind of research people are doing in the Arctic, what kind of research funds support. So the fields of earth sciences and biological sciences is still the most important. So they are the largest recipients of Arctic research funding. And of course, we can also think and talk about the countries who support the Arctic research, who spend more money. So the largest Arctic research nation in spending money, number of projects, number of publications, it's United States. Yeah, only Alaska is a part of real Arctic, but there's so many research centers, scientific research, scientific centers or centers which are working inside the American universities. They spend a lot of resources, pay very good attention to study the North and Arctic. Then Canada and Russia, and then these three followed by Norway and UK. Also, very important to remember that, yes, it's some political questions around Arctic and North, that we have two Arctic states and we have many non-Arctic states, but we have to remember that science, we don't make in the boundaries. So we can make boundaries for our research, but we are not divide science or divide boundaries. We need cooperation, communication between each other. As a result, for example, very good internationally focused research have some smaller Arctic countries. For example, Denmark, maybe the index of internationalization of research in Arctic, they have the highest rank. And also some countries which are increasing, extremely active. It's Japan, it's China, you can recognize, of course, United Kingdom, and of course, Germany, they are very active. And they are active not only in this part of the world, in circumpolar north. So today I'm talking about the circumpolar north, so northern hemisphere. But these countries at the same time, they are also extremely active in southern hemisphere. They are very active in Antarctic region. So same involvement. And by the way, some former leaders like France, for example. So France is still very active in Antarctic, some stations, research and project, but there is almost nothing when we are talking about the northern hemisphere. Not because it's their own opinions, their own decision inside. But scientists, yeah, there are very good scientists, some scientists, a few, not the whole organization, but very good northern focused researchers and scientists from France and from many other countries, but it's only like few people from each country. And what is also one of the important part of my explanation about the delimitations of the North, it's to be clear with understanding what research needs and priorities are important to Arctic development. So some years ago, I think that it's very close to 20. Some years ago, it was organized a joint European Union, Russia, Canada, United States workshop on collaborative technological research for Arctic development. And as a result of working of this commission, Arctic research in the 21st century, by the decision of this group of countries, should be focused at a minimum the following 4 major areas. So the first one, it's research to meet the needs of global models. So global modeling, so long-term program to track environmental changes, many countries involved. It's modeling program to test ideas about the coupling between different components and to attempt to predict the future course of change in the Arctic. And of course, it's impact of global change on the Arctic and the global ecosystem and societies that live within and depend upon those ecosystems of the Arctic. So the second direction, second major area for this research, it's research to measure changes in Arctic ecosystems and their flora and fauna. Also very important one. And here we have to remember about the indigenous peoples. So if the indigenous peoples of the Arctic are to maintain any semblance of their traditional cultures until the end of the 21st century, it is imperative that maintenance of healthy animal and plant populations be a high priority. So if we are thinking that indigenous people of the Arctic, they have to survive, so at least they need a stable, healthy animal and plant populations, because it's a part of their activity, traditional activities, and it's a part of their food. And Also, we have to understand that also the same problem exists with fish and sea mammal population, and this problem will require much greater efforts than the terrestrial problems. So from the research point of view, of course, it's mainly related with the Arctic Council Working Group, Conservation of Arctic Flora and Fauna, so CAF, as one of the working group of Arctic Council. The third one, the third major area for organizing the Arctic research for the 21st century, it's research to meet the needs of Arctic inhabitants, primarily those indigenous people in small communities. So the problem of small communities, the problem of people who live there. There are more than 1,500, so 1,500 small communities in the Arctic that they are not connected to their national road or railroad network. So there is no connection with their own country territory. And this will continue for a long time to be dependent upon air, annual marine or riverine transportation and telecommunications for interaction with the rest of the world. And you know that this small communities, they are talking about other parts of their own countries as about the mainland. So they think they live on the island and they have some connection with the mainland. And of course, regional air service in most Arctic countries still requires long flights south to connect to another flights north to make connection between communities only a few hundred kilometers apart from each other. So from this point of view, we remember this joke about the north. If you want to make a trip of 250 kilometers, you should go 5,000 kilometers because you have to use the long road to go to another place which is very close from you, by the way. And the last one of this explanation is the fourth major area for Arctic research in the 21st century. It's research to meet the needs of resource development in the Arctic. So similar, and now it's a modern time. So in the 21st century, like similar to the 1970s, there is again a high interest in pipelines, oil tankers, liquefied natural gas systems, and gas to liquid plants. And with the large number of projects being discussed, there is little doubt that some, if not many, will come to pass. So this is an area where research money, both and public or government or private, will be available, and where a high degree of coordination will be necessary between these efforts. It's one of the special area. And of course, it's because it's continued research in oil spill response. It's especially in areas impacted by ice should remain a high priority. And also in the present situation where changes in permafrost temperatures are being noted at a rate never observed before. So there's so many changes. And I think that during the last 15 years, scientists, even geocryologists, they really now think that they thought 30 years ago that they knew a lot about the permafrost. But now 30 years later or 15 years after, in modern time, they think that they don't know the permafrost. So there is so many things to do because so many projects coming, so many construction are coming in new places where we were just thinking that we know the situation, that we know the nature around us. So as a result, I can say in conclusion that understanding of the North, understanding of the Arctic is a very important topic for the whole world, because because many countries, if they are very far from this part of the world, they really become a part of activity in this part of the world. So North, from this point of view, it's a very alive subject for research, and North is very interesting region where is so many changes, and the boundaries in the North are changing. The definition of the North really changing now, and also understanding of connection between the North and southern areas are also different than it was a couple of years ago. So thank you very much for this.